As a preliminary matter, this is Wendy Steinhilber, Chair of the Auburn Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me.
Yes.
Members, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. John Regan.
This conference will now be recorded.
When I call your name, will you please respond in the affirmative? John Regan?
I don't see him signed in yet, Wendy.
Okay. Ron Brooks?
Yes.
Scott Wren?
I don't see him either. John,
Oh,
just
there's John. Okay. John Regan? Please just respond in the affirmative when I call your name. Steve Chambers?
Here.
Okay, great. And John Regan?
Here. Can you hear me?
There we are. Yep, we can hear you. So Nick Lynch is not going to be joining us tonight. So the only one we're looking for is Scott Wren.
I don't see that he signed in yet.
Okay. Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town planner Adam Menard.
I'm here.
Staff assistant Rachel Pressy. I'm here. Cable TV manager Chris Hugo.
He's here.
Okay.
We've got several other people.
Good evening. Okay, so we're just looking for Scott. When Scott signs in, we'll acknowledge. So good evening. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Planning Board of Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, now called to order at 6 p.m. This meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, in order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we've been directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded to the public so they can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. This meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by remote participation for the public only, although some members of the Board of Selectmen are physically located in the Selectmen's meeting room in Town Hall. Those members and employees are practicing social distancing in accordance with the governor's orders. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, call 1-312-757-3121 and enter access code 133747477. Or the public can join via computer at gotomeeting.com /join/133-747-477. Remote access information has been posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by the Auburn Cable Television. Accordingly, those members of the planning board, employees, and members of the public who participate, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and please take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow using the posted agenda. We're now turning off to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Chair of the Board, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the Chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. We'll first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. If technical difficulties arise, I will suspend the meeting while attempts to resolve are made, and we'll keep accurate minutes noting any disconnections and reconnections of members. So the first item that we're going to take up tonight will be the authorization not required by the Auburn Mall 385 Southbridge Street. And I believe Mr. Broder.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you to just give us a rough idea of the change.
Sure, thanks. Just for the record and those listening, it's Attorney Todd Broder from Fletcher Tilton. The reason that you're looking at another approval not required plan for this parcel that's a portion of the Auburn Mall is related to when the ALTA survey was done just recently. The ALTA survey picked up certain points on the survey, and it was realized that the setbacks for the portion of the building near the Mass Pike and the portion of the building near Brotherton Way were not adhered to, so they were off by a few inches in each direction. So when they put the bounds in, they redid everything here, and so we've got a new A&R plan to replace the prior A&R plan, which now has the appropriate setbacks in the rear where the Mass Pike is, and then on the Brotherton Way side of the building as well. When they did that, they expanded the rear area near the Mass Pike because there is a fairly large loading dock area down there with a concrete apron, so they decided to include that piece of it with this parcel as well. Just seemed to make sense. So those are really the changes. Otherwise, it's the same concept that you saw previously with the A&R plan maybe a month or two ago.
All right, great. Adam, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, it's pretty much just a correction of the previous A&R. I will add that we'll need to have the Mylar signed at some point. We can talk about that at a later point, but I talked to the Registrar of Deeds, and they do need a wet signature on the Mylar plan.
Okay. So we just need to entertain a motion for to accept the A&R as presented.
I'll make that motion.
And could you please identify yourself?
Steve Chambers.
Steve Chambers making the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Ronnie Brooks.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We need a roll call, Wendy.
Ronnie? Yep.
We need a
Ronnie?
roll call.
Aye.
Okay, John Reagan?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Scott Wren? And neither are there, and I'm also an aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the minutes, the meeting minutes from March 10th. Were there any corrections, additions, deletions? Anyone? I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Make that motion, John Regan.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
Second, Steve Chambers.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ronnie Brooks?
Aye.
No, it's roll call. John Regan?
Aye.
Steve Chambers?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, aye. Okay. Talk about the site plan modification modification for Patrick Lundgren at 117 Washington Street. Who is here for Lundgren?
For the record, I'm Brian Nelson from Metro West Engineering.
Okay, Brian, could you tell us a little bit about the site plan modification?
Sure. The construction out of 117 Washington Street for the new Lundgren Collision Center and the retail building is recently completed. We submitted an as-built plan to the town basically a couple weeks ago, and upon examination of the plan, the dumpster enclosure that was shown on the proposed site plans that were approved by the board was actually located very close proximity to the southeast corner of the building, or the back right corner of the building if you're looking at it in plan. As interior design of the building evolved through the bidding process, and they realized that they needed a bigger dumpster. That location was moved to the southeast corner of the parking area, so it was moved towards the back of the property on the top right corner if you're looking at the property and plan. So basically it's just the location switched, and in doing that, basically the architecture and the functionality of the building inside works better, and we've got increased basically accessibility, and then basically egress through the back of the property for vehicles as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask each one of the members of the planning board questions, concerns. So, Steve Chambers, any questions, concerns?
Not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Brooks?
Brian, is that dumpster, well, there's no residential residences close to that southeast corner up and back, is there?
I do not believe so, but actually I can take a look on the site plan. Bear with me 1 second. There are two accessory buildings, but there are no residences from the trailer park near that. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
John Regan?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. My only comment, Brian, would be to extend that nice vinyl fence that you've got, a couple more panels, and provide a little bit more privacy up that way now that you're moving the dumpster.
Okay. How far would you like us to extend the fence? Maybe like another 20 feet or so?
More panels would probably be sufficient to give, to block that from the view of the people that live next door.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Is there any public comment on this? Anyone like to say anything? Okay.
Do we have to agree this is a minor modification?
Correct, please.
Yeah, that will be the first thing. I just was just looking again. So, Adam, we have to first make a motion that this is, or agree that this is a minor modification.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that there's a minor modification. Ronnie Brooks.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John Regan.
John Regan, second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Steve Chambers?
Aye.
Ronnie Brooks?
Aye.
John Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, aye. Okay, and then do we need to make another motion on that, Adam?
Yes, you need to accept the modification. Approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Right. Okay, so let's make a motion to accept the minor modification.
I'll make that motion to accept the minor modification. Ronnie Brooks.
With two more panels for the fence.
To be extended.
Great. Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second it, John Regan.
John Regan, okay. All those in favor? Steve Chambers?
Steve Chambers, aye.
Ronnie Brooks?
Aye.
John Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, aye. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you very much. I hope you're all healthy and safe, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. The A&R fee for Penrose Properties for the Mary B. Stone School. Adam, can you tell the group a little bit about this?
Sure. You might recall that the A&R was brought before the planning board a month or so ago, which was approved and signed off. However, I neglected to bring this up at the time. Town administration is working with the developer Penrose to try to eliminate or to scale back some of the fees that are required for that project. It's the affordable housing for our seniors. Town administration is pretty supportive, so we're trying to save them some money if we can. The fee for an A&R plan, for this particular A&R plan, was $250. So I'd like to ask the planning board to waive that fee.
Steve, did you have any comments, questions, concerns?
This is the only fee they're looking for, or there'll be more coming down the road?
This is the only one for planning board. There are other fees for, like building permits, the building commissioner, for sewer. There are other fees, but the only one that the planning board has any control over is this particular one, the A&R.
I'm all done. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Brooks?
I'm all set.
Mr. Regan?
All set.
Okay, so we'll make a motion to accept waiving the fees for the required fee for the planning board for Penrose Properties. Who'll make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Ronnie Brooks.
Okay, second?
I'll second that, Steve Chambers.
Okay, great. And so all those in favor, Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. All right.
Wendy, I believe I saw Mr. O'Neill for SEL Realty log on, if you want to take him.
Which one is it, Adam?
That's the Hampton Street subdivision, SZLL Realty.
Okay. So, who is here for SZLL Realty LLC?
Madam Chairwoman, it's Donald O'Neill. I'm here for SCLL Realty. I believe Joe Graham, the engineer, is also online. I did see his name in the program listing.
Okay. Did you have an update?
I think on this one, we're still waiting for comments back from Graves Engineering. We had submitted some additional information electronically, and there had been a request for additional fees for the review of the material that we were submitting. And we haven't received any comments yet. I did have an exchange with Adam earlier today where he indicated that Graves was looking for a paper copy of the hydraulic calculations. And we did have a little bit of a problem in terms of getting the paper printed copies with the shutdown and the difficulty in terms of getting copies generated and delivered. We weren't expecting that the paper copy would be necessary for Graves to complete their review process. And normally, at least in my experience, the paper copies are something which people put in their file and have it for future reference, but that in terms of the actual review, we were expecting really that they could do that based on the electronic information that had been filed. And it's my understanding really that there are no comments back from Graves, so there's really nothing for the board to discuss or for us to respond to without those comments. I did look on the agenda, and it looks like the board's next meeting is on 4/28, which is just 2 weeks away. And what I was hoping was if there was a way for the board basically to get word to Graves that if at all possible, that they could complete their review of the information that was provided and perhaps hopefully get back to us within about a week or so that we would have time to then respond to whatever comments they have and hopefully have this matter continue to the 28th and have a substantive discussion at that time, so that we could move forward. And I do realize that, the circumstances which everyone is operating under and the difficulties that presents, but my client is getting anxious or wants to try and move this forward as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And I do know that you do need their comments, and was hopeful that you could just get word to them that you would hope to see that, hope for us to receive comments within the next week or so, as I've indicated.
Okay, so we'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to April 28th, and if, Adam, could you outreach to Graves?
Yeah, I'll get in contact with them again and ask them to get working on it.
All right, and we'll find out if indeed it can be completed and make a decision whether to, go forward at that time or continue the hearing again. So I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing till April 28th.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Wendy, this is Ronnie. Through you,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're cognizant, and I spoke to Adam about it the other day, about with any of these applicants, that we're not under any time constraints, or that we have the signature pages or something from them, so that we're not under that consignment where anybody could get constructive approval.
And Adam, can you confirm that that's true?
The Attorney General issued, and the Governor issued some new guidance with the bill that was passed a couple weeks ago. I don't think that impacts this particular case because this applicant came to us last year, so I don't think it impacts. It's affected by the new timetable. There were requirements that action had to be taken. Depending whether it was a site plan, a special permit within so many days, and that's been altered through because of the coronavirus situation. I don't think that impacts the subdivision.
Okay. You satisfied with that, Mr. Brooks?
Yes, I just want to make sure we're cognizant of it on any and all applications that we have.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to April 28th.
Steve Chambers, I'll make that motion.
Steve Chambers has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Ronnie Brooks.
Ronnie Brooks has seconded it. All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Reagan?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Recused.
Recused, okay. And Wendy Steinhuber, yes. So that hearing will be continued into April 28th.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. The applicant CGT Inc. requesting a special permit and site plan approval under 3.9.2.2 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a drive-through coffee shop located at 711 Southbridge Street, Auburn, Mass, map 61, parcel 37. Is there anyone here for that hearing?
Chairman?
Yes?
Wendy, can you confirm, is that the current Dunkin' Donuts site?
No, this is the one that they're trying to put the new one up where the old AMF jeweler was.
No, it's the old Dunkin' Donuts, Wendy.
It's the old Dunkin' Donuts that wants to go down where AMF Jewelers is in the TJ Maxx Plaza, correct?
Right, correct. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Are we doing that?
Where AMF Jewelers was, right? Okay. So I'm not hearing that anyone's here for that meeting. Yes?
Wendy, am I looking at it right? It says applicant Robert Lemansky.
No, that's the existing Dunkin' Donuts. Mr. Lemansky is looking for a special permit. That's another hearing. This one is down at the bottom of the agenda under the SZLL Realty. It's the applicant CJT Inc. requesting a special permit and site plan approval.
Yes, that's...
Adam, can you put the agenda up?
Yeah, I can. Give me a minute.
Thank you.
Yes.
717.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Chambers?
Was there additional information in this packet regarding that one, or is that just a continuation from previous meetings?
Well, hearing that no one is here for that meeting, I'm assuming that we're going to continue it to the April 28th meeting. I was waiting to see if anybody was here for that hearing, but there isn't. So it appears we're going to continue it. And it is the Dunkin' Donuts, the new one that they're trying to build in the Auburn Plaza parking lot, where AMF Jewelers was.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Oh, Adam's gone, but I believe they're still, in addition to whatever else, they're waiting for some responses from the state DOT on the road on Southbridge Street.
Correct.
That's correct. That was the last I heard, Wendy, last week, was they're working with MassDOT on the whole Route 12, whether extending a turning lane or some other options, possibly moving the entrance. There's several outstanding questions they're still working on, so I didn't hear from them. I wasn't sure if they were coming or not today.
Okay. And I'm not hearing that anyone is here for that hearing, so I would entertain a motion to continue to April 28th. So moved.
Steve Chambers makes that motion.
Is there a second?
Wren, seconds.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Reagan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, aye. Okay. It has been continued to April 28th. The public hearings, were we able to start those, Adam, or?
Unfortunately not. We've got to wait until their timed hearings since they were advertised. That way we can't start them at a time.
All right. Is there any new business that you wanted to, any updates or anything, Adam?
Not a whole lot. We're working through a couple grants at the moment. An MVP grant that we received last year. I think I might have told you about this before. It's a Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness grant, working to identify and improve some of the drinking water sources in town by mitigating some of the salt on the highways. So we're working on that, as well as trying to come up with a conceptual design for a bridge over the Sword Street culverts that are failing. So that's kind of an ongoing grant we're working on. That grant runs until June of this year, so it's a tight time frame to wrap that up. It's a fairly substantial grant. It was almost, it was $145,000 from the state.
Wow.
Yep, and there's another round of MVP grant opening up in a couple of weeks, so we're hoping to further proceed on another grant to help with the Sword Street culverts. We're also working on another grant with CMRPC, the LTA grant, District Local Technical Assistance. This grant was for almost $20,000. We're working on a conceptual redesign of Goddard Park. I don't know if you've been up there lately. It needs a little bit of attention, some modernizing. So they're working with us to try to redevelop, come up with ideas to redevelop that area. Whether it's expand the walking trails, maybe a boat launch, or the WRTA bus stops, just bring back that area to life. So that's another grant we're working on.
Okay. So should we suspend the meeting until 7:05?
Yeah, I think we can take a recess for 25 minutes. That's up to you. We can do that. We can leave the computers running and just pause the meeting.
Okay.
So you should take a vote if that's what you'd like to do.
Okay. So entertain a motion to take a 20-minute recess, 21-minute recess until the 7:05 hearing.
I'll make that motion, Ronnie Brooks.
Okay, and is there a second?
John Regan.
Okay, and so all those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren? Aye. Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. We don't need a motion to come back, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the 705 applicant S&K Development LLC requests for a special permit for earth removal under Chapter 12.16 of the Auburn General Bylaw for removal of earth at 373 Oxford Street, North Auburn, Mass. Map 40, parcel 69. Who on the call is from the S&K Development?
This is Michael Scott. I'm an engineer at Land Design Collaborative, and I'm here. And there's another group, George Smith, Jim Smith, and Matt Carlson are also present.
Okay. You want to give us...
Wendy, we need a vote to open the hearing, Wendy.
Oh, my apologies. We need a motion to open the hearing?
Wendy, I'll make a motion to open the hearing, but could you ask them, or Adam, can you designate a little closer as to where this is, the location of this is?
Yes, let's get the motion taken care of first. Mr. Brooks, Ron Brooks has made a motion to open the hearing. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion, John Regan.
Okay, great. All those in favor? Mr. Chambers? Steve?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Motion to open. We have a motion to open. Mr. Brooks made the motion. John seconded. All those in favor?
Okay, Steve Chambers, aye.
Okay, Scott?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. Okay, it is a motion. It's open. So if you'd like to, Mike, if you want to give us an overview and the exact location, I think I know where it is, but Mr. Brooks is looking for more information.
Sure.
You're on.
This is at 373 Oxford Street North. It's on the east side of the road, and I'm going to mispronounce the cross street, Rethel Street. Rethel, just south. Thank you. Just south of Rethel Street. It's about an acre and a half lot, if I recall, and there's a single-family home on the site. The site plan is up. That was prepared by New England Land Survey, and again, George Smith is on the call as well. There's a home on the northwest corner of the lot, and the intent is to mine remove the sand and gravel deposits from the side to the south or right and behind the home. The home and driveway would remain presently. There is a shed at the rear of the property, or north central part of the property, that would come down, obviously as the grade were to come down. On the left side of the sheet, just to the left of where it says Oxford Street North, there's some calculations regarding the amount of material that they anticipate removing from the site, which is around 20,700 yards of material. And the owner, the Smiths, and their partner, Mr. Mike Conan, have arranged with Chuck Sepatelli. Mr. Sepatelli would do the removal of the material. He would screen material at the site and then truck the material to one of his processing plants in Webster. He's hoping to start as soon as possible, and he expects anywhere from a month to 2 months to remove the material.
Okay. Mr. Chambers, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Brooks?
Will they be moving any loam or topsoil?
The materials the loam is to be stockpiled at the rear of the site. I can't answer the question about the disposition, other than that the site will be restabilized with the material that is stripped. If there's any excess, I'd have to defer to the Smiths.
Right, because I believe that we do not allow, we have a bylaw that does not allow, without a permit or anything like that, the removal of topsoil or loam from the town. And Wendy, my question to you is, or Adam, what does the bylaw say now after all the changes we've had with, as a result, after effect of Lowell's, with respect to removing anything in addition to 500 yards other than the special permit?
No, they would just need a special permit if they were to, just at this point, just a special permit. As to your first question about the loam, I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I believe we have a bylaw to some respect with regards to removal of the loam from the town. But can I ask the applicant, through you, Mrs. Chairman, what is the purpose of removing the 20,000 yards?
Joe or Jim, do you want to take that?
Sure, this is Jim Smith. The idea is to make it informative aesthetics for the property. Right now, the house itself is shoved in the corner and it's kind of in a dark hole.
So the house that you see from Oxford Street, the newer ranch house that's sitting up on the hill, is that the one you're talking about?
No, we own the one at the bottom of the hill to the north, the upper north corner of the property.
The older White House?
Exactly, yep. That's the current house.
Down right, it's right almost on the level with Oxford Street?
I think it's correct, yes.
When you come out of Rethel Street, there's a house on the corner, and then you have the next house over, the old Prescott house?
Exactly. That's it. That's us. Yep.
Okay.
And
all right.
We don't propose to take any loam out of there. We were going to reuse that loam to move and seed the final phase.
So it won't leave any crazy grades that are directing water onto others' property or anything like that?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's basically takes that crazy hill that right when you come off the road. And so it'll be as gentle as great if we can take it back.
The only concern I have, Wendy, and others is that I don't know if we need to have some kind of a plan that shows what the grades are and everything. I think John might better know that.
They show the new topography.
This is Mike Scott. Again, the site grading plan does bring the drainage, or can retain the drainage on site. And as generally everything flows to the northwest, now. I say generally there's several divides, but a significant portion of the site drains to the northwest. Some does drain to the northeast. The majority of the site now will drain towards the west and northwest. And the plan does accommodate sediment basins during construction or during removal, sorry.
Mr. Reagan, did you have any questions?
Yeah, the new grades and time it takes between stripping, mining the lot for the gravel, and then putting the loam back down. How long is it going to be before that's stabilized? Because your temporary sediment basin's temporary.
According to the Chuck, the gentleman doing the excavation, I believe it's 1 to 2 months you'll finish the project.
But that wasn't my question. My question is, how long does the sedimentation basin stay there until the remainder of the lot is stabilized with new growth? Because the way this is graded right now, that's going right into the proposed temporary sedimentation basin. So if you loam it and seed it and fill that basin in, as soon as it rains, it's going to wash out into Oxford Street.
Right, so this is really the time of year, obviously, for grass growing. So if there's going to be, and when there is the necessity to vegetate, there will have to be some sort of watering, at least if there's no natural rain event, during that period, there'll need to be at least a weekly watering to make sure that that some vegetation takes.
It's going to be quite a while for a vegetation is going to take enough to support the slopes that you have there. So somehow you're going to have to stabilize the loam you respread with the seed. I mean, they have erosion control matting.
Certainly that could be warranted on the 3-to-1 slope, which is what is on the southern side of the site. The rest of the site's only about 4% slope, and these soils, as they've excavated, are purely sand and gravel here. So we're not talking till materials or clayey materials. These are low erosivity soils.
Yeah, that's the stuff underneath. That doesn't keep the loam on top. The loam washes right off. Doesn't matter what the underground is. Rain's hard enough that it's going right into Oxford Street. You need to put some sort of barrier all along Oxford Street.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to say, I think if it was clay, it would be less apt to wash away than it would be washing down if it was just the soft sand, which is privy to that area.
Yeah, that whole hill is sand.
Yeah, that was a big sand pit years ago.
Yeah. Mr. Reagan, did you have suggestions are to put hay bales all along Oxford Street North?
Yeah, either you put the hay bales and the sill fence up, or you put the sill fence up with the mulch that they have now, the big long tubes.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the slope to the south, you need to put erosion control mat.
Did any of the other planning board members have any questions? Scott, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Any other comments, John?
No, I go along with Ronnie about the 500 yards and no loam leaving the site. That is in the town bylaw.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to ask for public comments, and I do have some questions that came in from David Sampson at 24 Riesel Street. He wanted to know what controls are in place to limit the sand, dirt, and dust during the removal process. Mr. Scott?
Sorry, I was looking at the plan. I know know that the plan does show perimeter erosion control barrier. That's shown at around the entirety of the site. So, Mr. Regan and Mr. Brooks, that is a feature on the plan presently. The plan that was included or the erosion and sediment control document that was included with the application does talk about watering and/or dust palliative being required during work while the site is open and prior to stabilization. Those would all be measures that would be required under the US EPA's NPDS program as well.
Okay, and so to limit the sand, dirt, and dust, you're going to have water. It'll be being sprayed down. You've also talked about the barriers for silt and stuff out onto the street. And the next question is, how much earth is being removed? And I think we agreed it was 20,000 cubic yards, thereabouts.
Correct. It's noted on the plan as 20,750 yards.
20,750 yards. And the number, what does that equate to? This individual would like to know what the number of truckloads would be.
God.
I guess the concern that I'm seeing in his question is that the Rethel Street is not in very good shape, and it would be very easy to take that truck and go right over to 395 from Rethel Street. The Rethel Street's already in terrible condition, so I think what he's asking is, can they route those trucks so that they're not using Rethel Street to get to, or Rethel Street to get to 395?
It's approximately 830 loads.
830 loads?
Yep.
Okay. And could we make it a condition that the trucks cannot use Rethel Street to get to 395?
Wendy?
Yes, Mr. Brooks?
Do they know where they're taking the fill? To Webster?
They're taking it to Webster, which means they'd go right down Rethel Street to 395. Right?
They go right down and get on at the exit entrance there. In the lower end of Rethel.
Right.
And the only other option is to go take a left and go down Oxford Street and then go up and get on 290 right at the entrance to 290 in the pike there.
Right. I mean, it's a residential street. It would make sense to limit the way that the truck travels on that road.
Absolutely.
Okay. And go ahead, John.
You can either go that way or take a right out of the lot and get out of Bryn Mawr, take the right by Bryn Mawr School, and your next right, and you're right there at the highway.
Right. Anything but using Rethel Street. And the next question is, when is this starting? They've already started to take down the trees, and when will it end? Did you say it was going to be approximately 2 months, Mr. Scott?
Correct. They would expect somewhere between a month or two from when they begin the earth moving operations.
Okay. The next question is, after the earth is removed, when will loam and seed be completed? That'll happen pretty quickly, or?
Yeah, they would spread the material and then seed and stabilize the slopes. Again, you're talking, as Mr. Regan has pointed out, there would need to be some period of maintenance there to ensure that adequate precipitation is getting on the ground, and then there need to be some maintenance of the temporary erosion control barriers during that period.
Okay.
You're talking a few weeks minimum for vegetation to take.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy?
Yeah, Mr. Brooks?
Oh, I just want to say, especially being that it's very sandy soil and gravel, whatever rain hits, it's going to go right down real quick and not last there very long, because there's no subsoil in that area after you take the topsoil off. There might have been a little sandy sub, but other than that, it's all sand and gravel. The water will go right through it. And I don't know if any other members, I would, before making a decision, really like to go and look at the site in person and take a look at it. I don't know if John or anyone else would like to do that, but.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to continue on with these last couple of questions from Mr. Sampson on Rachel Street. Number 5, is there before and after topography of the lot, and how do you plan to grade the property so it protects and satisfies all of the abutters? And what controls are in place to ensure property is graded to established standards? If not, what recourse is there for the abutters? Mr. Scott?
So the plan shows the site generally grading from the rear to the front at about a 4% to 5% slope, which is very flat. The southern side is the steep portion where it is a 3-to-1 slope, but it slopes south to north, so it slopes into the property. And then on the north side of the site, there'll be a nominal ridge left, so that the folks on Reefel there'll be a small berm left. So the lot will actually not slope down towards Reefel, it'll slope back in upon itself, where it does not do that today. So there will be a small visual barrier as well as a grading barrier to prevent runoff from going onto any of the neighboring property.
Okay, so there will be some kind of a buffer between the abutter. And is there any plans for future location of future structures? Or is this, I think it's as you said, that this was just to be done to make it a better lot for the existing home. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that was correct. Yes.
Okay. And since this is the first meeting for the abutters and trees have already been removed, has the planning board received sufficient evidence to allow the project to proceed? Well, I think that's what we're here tonight for.
Wendy?
Yes.
I just want to ask again. He's saying that the site. How large did you say the site was? I didn't open my package because I didn't want to open it. But
acre and a half.
It's an acre and a half. And that existing house, you said it's the second house on Oxford Street when you come out of Reefel?
Yes.
Okay, so, because it sits kind of like in a little corner there. But, so the purpose of leveling this lot and taking the 20,000 plus yards out is solely to make a better yard for the existing house?
Anyone? Yes. Yeah.
And there's no intention of putting an additional home on it or anything else?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Well, and the Mr. Sampson, who asked the question, should know that if that does come to pass, they'll have to come back for any other additional project to proceed anyway. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Again, Wendy, I'd still, before a vote, like to take a look at it in person. I've known it for a long time, but I need to look at it a little differently now.
Absolutely. Adam, is there plans for a peer review on this?
Yes, Wendy. We received payment today, and the peer review went out to Graves today, so they'll be working on that right away. Also, there is a section in the bylaw that might be of interest to the board, section 4.3. The board may require that up to a 50-foot buffer strip shall be maintained at all boundaries and not excavated if they feel such a requirement is warranted. So the board does have some authority in that respect.
Okay. Mr. Scott, how much of a buffer did you say there was going to be
The buffer's small. I'm not able to measure the plan because I'm looking at PDFs myself.
Okay.
But it's a nominal buffer. There would be virtually, I will say the way that the plan is drawn right now, virtually all the vegetation comes down and then the site would be revegetated. So the limit of work is effectively the entire site, and the lot is 1.8 acres. I see the measurement on the number on the plan shown in front of the home.
How much frontage do they have, Wendy?
You know, I can't tell from this run. I'm looking at the same thing you are. How much frontage is there?
Well, 277.
277 feet?
Yes.
And can I ask them, Wendy, when you're done with the grade, how high above Refill Street, above Oxford Street will you be approximately?
All right, the front of the site will effectively be at the, maybe 5-6 feet above road grade, and then meaning that the rear of the site,
And then you said it's tapering back at a 4% grade.
Yeah, so the rear of the site's at about 590, meets existing grade, which is about 20 plus feet above existing grade, or above the road.
So in the front it's 4 or 5 feet above, and in the back it's about 20 feet.
Yeah, it'll come more or less right down to street grade at the entrance, and then it will slope up from there to the rear. And then the right side, as you look at the lot from the road, the south side of the property will be a 30-foot, anywhere from a 10 to a 30-foot cut, sloping to the north or from right to left as you face it.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I have a couple.
Okay, John.
On the south side of the plan, right where you're lower down the southwest corner, you say proposed temporary sedimentation basin, you show a drainage ditch, check dams. Once that temporary sedimentation basin is gone, does that drainage ditch go?
Yeah, that whole area will be restabilized. So the intent, that ditch could be filled in at the end of the site, or it could remain with the check dams in it. Again, the site is all sand and gravel, and that, that ditch really only collects the runoff from the steep slope. It does collect a little bit from the rest of the site, but generally that's meant to divert the steeper slope from running on into the flatter portion of the site.
Yeah, unfortunately, it diverts it right onto Oxford Street.
Right, and that's the intent of the basin there. Certainly the basin could be left, there could be a depression left at that location, but it's the requirement is to provide adequate volume to capture sediment so that it doesn't move onto the roads, and that's how that has been sized.
Yeah, but if you put in that, if the rain's heavy enough with that slope that you have there on the south side, that's going to run right out into Oxford Street. And I don't know if Oxford Street has the drainage capacity to handle that. That's something that Bill would have to answer.
Right. So right now, about 50% of the site runs onto Oxford Street. Maybe a little less than that. As you look at the grading, it all ends up running towards the home. And then the other 50 or 40% runs off to the, 60% runs.
My other question was, number one, you said it was 1.8 acres? It's not 1.8 acres, it's 1.38 acres. 60,289 divided by 43,560 is 1.38.
That's the area of disturbance. The lot itself is 1.8 acres.
Okay, my next question is, you said you were going to do some screening there of the material?
Correct. The operator intends to screen the material, segregate some of the material.
So we're going to have a gravel pit out there in the neighborhood. If he's taking it to a processing plant in Webster, why can't he just truck it down there and process it down there at his plant? I don't think the neighbors should have to put up with a gravel pit going on for 2 months. And you say, the growth season. Well, the growth season's over mid-June. And 2 months from now is mid to end of June. So you're not going to get the growth period you said you're going to get. You're way behind schedule.
Which is why I mentioned that they likely have to do some artificial watering here. But I'd have to defer to the operator or the Smiths with respect to the intent to screen at the site.
The only thing that should be screened at the site is loam to put back on the lot. and then, dust control again, like we had spoken about. But is the plan here to hydroseed the loam after it's put down? Or are you going to go around feeding chickens?
No, I believe the plan talks, or the sediment control narrative talks about hydroseeding the site, yes.
Anyone else on the board have any questions? Any public comments?
Wendy, I just, as John just asked them, I'd like to have an answer. I think we should have an answer from those that are going to be doing the screening or the gravel operation on exactly what they're processing out, how long it'll take, and, again, as John just reiterated, the dust that could be created by that.
Right, and nobody, again, 2 months of a gravel operation in your backyard.
During the summer.
It's not feasible, no. So we have put it out to Graves for peer review, and we have a lot of questions that need to be answered. We're also going to go and take a look at the site, and I think at this point we should probably continue the hearing. Adam, any sense of the length of Graves' review, or would April 28th be too soon, or should we shoot for that?
I have a feeling the 28th would be too soon. They just still received, I mailed the plans and documentation today, so they probably won't get it for a couple days. And we need all materials for the next meeting by next Thursday, so I'm guessing it's going to be too soon.
Okay, so the next hearing after the April 28th hearing is when?
May 12th.
May 12th? Okay. So we will, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to May 12th.
Wendy, I'll make that motion to continue this hearing to May 12th.
Mr. Brooks has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John Regan.
John Regan has made the second. All those in favor, Steve Chambers?
Aye.
Scott Wren?
Aye.
Ronnie Brooks?
Aye.
John Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber? Aye. It is a vote. We'll see you on May 12th. Please be prepared to answer a lot of those questions, and we'll have the site plan review approved by that time as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
710 applicant Robert Lemansky, L-A-R-E-R-T, request for special permit for drive-up facility under 3.9.2.2 of the Auburn zoning bylaw to allow a drive-through on property located at 717 Southwood Street, Auburn, Mass, map 60, parcel 80. Is Mr. Lemansky on the line?
Yes, present.
Great. Okay. Want to tell us a little bit? I mean, I think we know, but for our viewing.
Open the public hearing first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Entertain a motion to open the hearing.
I'll make that motion, Wendy. Ronnie Brooks.
Okay. And is there a second?
I'll second. Scott Wren.
Okay. Mr. Brooks has made the motion. Mr. Wren has seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, aye. The hearing is now open. Mr. Lemansky, can you please tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, Madam Moderator. Again, Robert Lemansky submitting a special permit application for the continuation of the use that was first applied for by CGT Inc., approved by the Auburn Planning Board and filed with the town clerk back in April 8th of 1988. The purpose at the time was a restaurant coffee shop included with the application. It was the original site plan approved by the Auburn Planning Board and filed with the Auburn Town Clerk on April 8th, 1988. There's been no changes to the building or parking lot since the original permit were issued. The purpose of why I'm doing this is
my longtime tenant is in the process of completing the location, and as I found out, the special permit is in the name of CGT, and if CGT leaves, then the use of the building, which is being used for right now, can no longer exist. As far as having that drive-up window. So what I'm trying to do is protect that use by putting the drive-up window permit, special permit, in the name of Robert Leminski Realty Trust. I believe my engineer, Jay Du Bois, is on the line. Is that correct, Jay? Hello, Jay? Okay, because he's not signed in. But anyways, what you do have in front of you is the original site plan, which, like I said, has not changed over the period of time. They may have remodeled and re-asphalted and changed the color of the building, but none of the actual movements have changed. And as you will see, is not only is the drive-up area go around the building, but also there's a pass-through lane that is there as well, so it allows for cars to move easily in and off the property. So that's basically what it is. It's really just asking for a continuation of what's already there.
Comments from the board, Mr. Brooks?
Wendy, I think we should want to know what would be going there if the existing Dunkin' Donuts isn't there, because every other applicant that we ever have for a site plan, we want to know what they're doing and what type of business they're going to have. I mean, it could be a pharmacy, it could be a coffee shop, it could be anything. We usually require that we want to know what that business that's going in would be.
Right, and I think the crux of it is if the use changed, so if it was no longer a drive-through coffee shop, then they would have to come before the planning board. Is that correct, Adam?
Correct. Correct.
So if that's the case, I don't see why we would extend it, and we'd wait until we see who was coming or what they were going to do before we would extend the drive-up window.
Through the chair, Ronnie, I think that the applicant needs to be able to market the property as such with the permit being in place that it has a drive-through.
Thank you. That's exactly the purpose.
Yes, I mean, we can continue the drive-through. It doesn't have to be functioning as a drive-through, but having that there is just continues the currently existing use. If something new to go in, for example, at Bank, they'd have to come back for a change of use, but nothing would really change, continuing it as is. This isn't for a site plan.
As long as it continues as is. Right, as a drive-through for a coffee shop. Any other change of use has to come back before the planning board. I just want to make sure I'm clear about that, correct?
Madam Chairman, I'm certainly in agreement with that. For instance, if it turned into a package store and they wanted a drive-up window, by all means, that's going to go back in front of the board for special permit. It would certainly be a change of use.
Right. So any change of use is going to require that you come back before the planning board. Mr. Regan, did you have any questions or concerns?
Not at this time.
Mr. Chambers?
No comments at this time.
Okay. Mr. Wren? Nothing additional. Okay.
Wendy?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, I'm okay as long as it's for the exact use as exists now. But
correct.
Anything else absolutely has to come before us.
Right. Right. I think that's the understanding for everybody, correct?
Correct.
And I would ask that Rachel reflect that in the minutes.
Okay. So close the hearing?
Yes, please.
Entertain a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make that motion. Scott Wren.
Okay, Mr. Wren has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John Regan.
Okay, Mr. Regan has seconded it. All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber? Aye. It is a vote. The hearing is closed. And entertain a motion for the special permit for drive-up facility, and any change of use must come before the board.
Scott Wren, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Wren has made the motion. Is there a second?
Steve Chambers, second.
Mr. Chambers has seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. It is a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and consideration.
Okay, 7:11 p.m. Applicant Eastland Partners request for site plan approval under section 3.2.2.1 and 5.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a two-family dwelling on property located at 23-25 Albert Street, Auburn, Mass, map 65, parcel 42.
Open the hearing.
Is someone here from Eastland Partners?
Yep. Hi, Mr. Chairwoman and members of the board. My name is Clay Williams. I work with Eastland Partners. I also have Stephen O'Connell here with me from Turning Point Engineering, the design engineer. Good evening.
Wendy, can you open the public hearing?
Yep. Can I have a motion to open the hearing?
I'll make that motion, Ronnie Brooks.
And Mr. Brooks has made the motion. Is there a second? Somebody?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mr. Regan has seconded it. All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. It's open. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
So I come here before you and your board tonight to discuss a number of properties over on Albert Street, the first of which being number 23 and 25. We are on the agenda for the Zoning Board of Appeals in about 2 weeks to apply for a special permit to construct a two-family dwelling in the rural residential zone. Yep, there's a site plan. And after conversations with Adam Menard, he informed me that anytime the ZBA or Zoning Board of Appeals grants a special permit, that triggers site plan review through your board. So that's why we're here tonight. If you'd like, I can describe a little bit about these two-family homes, if you think that would be helpful. I also gave Adam a link to a previous community that Eastland Partners constructed of the exact same unit type, so the board could kind of visualize what these would look like.
Okay, that would be good. Thank you.
Great. Off a little bit.
Let me know when you want that pulled up.
Yeah, so I would say go ahead and pull that up, Adam.
Wait, just give us a second.
Sure. Yeah. And this photo gallery should just flip through a couple of pictures. The pictures we're all looking at now are from a community called Rogerson Crossing we built in Uxbridge. The site plan we have provided to you tonight and the building permit plans that are in with Caleb basically mirror these unit types exactly. These units each are 2 bedrooms. We have coined this type of housing as quote-unquote empty nester housing. It typically attracts older individuals who are looking to downsize, who no longer have any school-age children living in their household. As part of some of the planning we did for the original subdivision, we increased all of the lot sizes to more than 69,000 square feet to meet the dimensional standards. All of the frontages and setbacks had already complied with the rules and regulations in town. Moving down, just a couple of other features. According to Title V, since these are two-bedroom homes, they'll be projected to consume 220 gallons per day of water and create 220 gallons per day of wastewater. And we have already received commitments from Auburn Water and Auburn Sewer for these 4 duplexes. As I've said, we've built a number of these homes at Rogerson Crossing and in other locations. So we really have seen that these create good revenue for the towns without creating a lot of the costly impacts, such as school-age children or other things like that.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Well, my question
You're breaking up.
I'm just curious what he means by it creates good revenue for the town. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, so it's basically, the real estate tax revenue generated.
I said
Could you hear me?
We're losing you.
Is each two-family and 4 bedrooms?
Yes, for the total 2 units.
Any better?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, so there's 2 bedrooms per unit.
So each two-family, you're right. So each two-family has 4 bedrooms.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yep.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So you had mentioned what these type of homes typically attract. Are you looking to make it a senior living community or put any restrictions on the people that can purchase this?
So we call this age restricted by design. We tend to stay away from the harsher deed restrictions, and through kind of the appeal of single floor living, having only 2 bedrooms and the 2-car garage, it's proven effective at, targeting those older demographics, while still allowing the homes to be flexible in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Regan?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. I noticed that your sewer lines, they come out, looks like in the same trench. And I assume these properties are going to be purchased. So 27 would be one lot, 29 would be another lot, 25 and 23 would be separate lots, quote unquote, with a dividing line through the center of the duplex, correct?
Hi, Mr. Regan. This is Steve O'Connell from Turning Point Engineering. To answer your question, it's undecided whether these will be sold or rented units, but in either scenario, under probably the condominium, they'll share a lot, and condominium documents would be created. Providing separate ownership entities between the units down the party wall. So the assessor has assigned these addresses with the understanding that the duplex will be situated on one lot.
Right, no, I understand that, but I'm looking at your utilities, and I see you have the water marked, well, not on this particular plan, we do on the other plans, 10 feet away from the sewer line, but the water line on this line comes in off Albert Street. So my question is, the sewer lines, how close together are they? Because if these are, they can be rental units now, but someday they can be sold separately. So they each have to have their own sewer service, correct?
Yep, they do. And the
they have to be far enough apart so you can dig one up and fix it without ripping up the other one. You got to run it. Yep,
they're about 8 feet apart from my scale here, but there's generally no restriction on separation of sewer lines.
Well, if they're 8 feet apart, you got room for 2 eyes, but the way it's drawn, you don't have room for 2 eyes in that area. My other question is, you have a finished floor elevation of 632 and slab equals 631. Is that a 1-foot slab?
Yeah, so it's the garage slab. We'll have a couple steps up into the living space of the unit. The slab elevation refers to the garage slab elevation, and the finished floor is the dwelling unit elevation.
Okay. That's all I have, Wendy.
Okay, John, thank you. Scott, anything?
No, I think these are similar to Windmill Estates and a few other projects we have in town, and yeah, there is a need for them. I defer to John as far as his questions there, but this looks fine to me.
Yeah, there is a definite need for them in town for sure. So until we get the zoning board of appeals, and what other things do we need? We're going to have to open and close each one of these hearings. Open them and continue all of them. Can we do it in one fell swoop?
I would do them separately just for clarity's sake. Also want to see if there's anybody in the public that has questions that are joining in.
Yeah. So are there any comments from the public?
Eileen Lassard, 11 Blaker Street.
And your name?
Eileen Lassard at 11 Blaker Street.
Okay, Eileen, what's your question?
Well, I know that there's one road going by these homes at Albert Street. Is there any other access road?
So for the first home, the one that's currently shown up on the screen, that would front on Blaker Street, but the other 3 duplexes would front on the Albert Street extension. So it would be just that one road that goes directly down to Route 20 through that signalized interchange.
There's no other exit road.
It's an approved subdivision called Albert Street, and it's currently under construction. So,
right.
So like I said, only one of the duplexes will access off Blaker, and the others will be accessed off of the subdivision road, which is under construction. When it's ready.
Right. I'm just
a minute. Yes. Who is that asking for?
Oh, Ronnie.
Okay. What's the question?
Are these duplexes on the old Albert Street, and then it crosses Blaker, and then it goes up onto the new Albert Street or Albert Street extension into your project?
So they will all be on the new portion of Albert Street, on the northern side of Blaker, with the exception of 23 and 25 having frontage on Blaker Street. But the other 3 homes or 3 duplexes will be to the north on the new portion of the street that's not yet completed.
How many is there altogether?
I'm sorry, Ron, go ahead.
Is there 5 or 4?
There's 4.
Eileen, did you have any other questions?
Because this is being put forth as senior housing, so to speak, I'm just concerned about there being only one road, because I deal with a senior group of over 4,000 members, and they have a lot of more medical emergencies, and if something should happen to that road, I would just be concerned about being able to get at people who might need ambulances.
Through the chair, I did pass these projects along to the various town departments and had no comments from police or fire.
Thank you, Adam. Eileen, did you have any other questions?
No, I think that should do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
Anyone else? Any other member of the public like to comment? Okay. Adam, do you think continuing this to April 28th or May 12th?
The ZBA meeting is on April 23rd, so I think we'd be safe on the 28th of April.
All right. So I think we'd like to continue this to the April 28th hearing until we have more information. Now, is this going out for peer review as well, Adam, or is this?
No, I did not send this out for peer review. I didn't really think it was necessary.
Okay. All right. So they should have an answer from the zoning board on the 23rd, and it would be okay to continue it to the 28th. Is there somebody else that wanted to say something?
It's Eileen Lassard again. I've lost track of what's happened to the original purpose for Eastland extending the road. Are there going to be other apartments up in the back there that would be impacted by these houses?
So that will be covered at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting following the 23rd. We'll be submitting the plan package for the 5th lot in the subdivision then. So you could expect to get more abutters notifications for that portion of the project in about a month.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to April 28th.
I'll make the motion to continue to April 28th. John Regan.
Regan made the motion. Who's seconding?
I'll second. Ronnie.
Okay. All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. It is a vote. We'll see you on the 28th. 712 applicant Eastland Partners requests a site plan approval under section 3.2.2.1 and 5.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a two-family dwelling on property located at 27-29 Albert Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 65, parcel 52. Could I have a motion to open the hearing? Who made the motion?
John.
John Regan made the motion. Who seconds?
I'll second. Scott Wren.
Scott Wren has seconded. All those in favor, Steve Chambers.
Aye.
John Regan.
Aye.
Connie Brooks.
Aye.
Scott Wren.
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. The hearing is opened. And again, can we just do a quick, this one will be fronted on Albert Street. Mr. Williams?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so same design, same scenario going to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, exactly. These four submission packages were identical in every sense except for these front on Albert Street, and then the numbers are different. Other than that, it's the same number of water, used and discharged. It's the same thing. Square footage, architecture, yeah.
Square footage, okay. And so again, you're going before the Zoning Board of Appeals 23rd, and so we can continue to April 28th.
I have one question.
Sure, John.
It's not exactly the same. The difference between the garage elevation and the finished floor elevation is only 6 inches. I don't know what code is. I don't know why they're not all the same, but they're all supposed to be the same. They all should be a foot. This one's 6 inches.
This is Steve O'Connell from Turning Point. We're within the code requirements. You're probably thinking of the old code that used to have a 4-inch. They call that like a gas trap, from the garage for vehicles in the garage, but it's no longer applicable. And it used to be 4 inches.
But why do you have one 1 foot and one 6 inches? I don't get it.
Just topography on this site, on this lot versus the first application? I mean, it's not significant, but just trying to save on fill wherever we can.
More poor concrete.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, could we get a motion to continue to April 28th?
I'll make the motion to continue to April 28th, John Regan.
Okay, and who's second?
Ronnie, I'll second.
Okay, Ron, you have seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, yes. Aye. Continue to April 28th. 713 hearing, applicant Eastland Partners, Inc. requests a site plan approval under section 3.2.2.1 and 5.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a two-family dwelling on property located at 28-30 Albert Street, Auburn, Mass., map 65, parcel 70. Any differences? Make a motion to open the hearing.
I'll make that motion, Ronnie. But Wendy, did we have to do a continuance on the second one we just did?
We did do the continuation to April 28th. We continued it to April 28th. Okay, so the motion to open the hearing has been made by Mr. Brooks. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John Regan.
John Regan. All those in favor? Steve Chambers?
Aye.
John Regan?
Aye.
Scott Wren?
Aye.
Ron Brooks?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber? Aye. The meeting is open. Are there any significant differences in this 28 to 30 Albert Street than the others?
Nope. As Mr. Regan previously noted, this one will have just a 6-inch difference between the garage slab and the finished elevation within the home. So it's the same as the last plan we just talked about.
Okay, and again, it's a 2-bedroom on each side, and okay.
Yep.
All right. Are there any questions from the planning board members?
I have one.
Okay.
On the double sewer coming out of this lot, it's both going into the same manhole, so they can't be 8 feet apart. So my question is, does that manhole have to be a 5-foot diameter manhole instead of a 4-foot diameter manhole? Because it looks like you have 4 penetrations.
Yeah, so what will happen is one of those sewer services will come into the manhole and the other will come into the main downstream of the manhole. Probably could have been illustrated better on the plan.
Okay.
Any other questions from the planning board? Any questions from the public?
Wendy, the only question I have is Wendy, the question I have is what John brought up earlier is, I kind of feel that each unit should have a separate sewer line all by itself so that if they're ever separated into separate ownership, one side doesn't have to be disrupted for the other one to be repaired.
And that is the case here on the plan as part of our proposal. Each unit will have its own individual set of utilities, water, sewer, electric, cable, telephone. So your concern should be addressed.
Okay.
Or just commit to a condo. It's fine.
Say again?
No, I was saying, or just commit to a condo and it can be a common expense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any comment from the public? I'll entertain a motion to continue. Again, it's going to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals on April 23rd. Entertain a motion to continue to April 28th.
I'll make that motion, Ronnie.
Mr. Brooks has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Steve Chambers.
Steve Chambers is seconded. All those in favor? Steve?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Mr. Regan? John? Did we lose John?
It looks like he might have logged off.
Scott?
Aye.
Yeah, John's gone.
It says that he's on mute on his microphone, but he's still, a part of the call, it looks like.
Yeah, but I have to hear his voice say.
So maybe somebody walked in or something.
All right, bear with me a minute.
Yep.
It's on his end, so. Might have gotten called away if he can't make he's back.
Well, there'd still be four of us. So we'll continue, motion to continue. We've got the, and Wendy Steinhuber, aye. So, John.
Wendy, he's back.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I'm here. I said aye in the last one.
Oh, okay. You disappeared, so okay. So it is a motion. It's continued to April 28th. 7:14 p.m. Applicant Eastland Partners requests a site plan approval under Section 3.2.2.1 and 5.4 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a two-family dwelling on property located at 31-33 Albert Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 65, parcel 68. Any motion to open the hearing?
I'll make that motion, Steve Chambers.
Okay, Steve Chambers has made the motion, and is there a second?
I'll second it, John Regan.
John Regan has seconded. All those in favor, Steve?
Aye.
Scott Wren?
Aye.
Ronnie Brooks?
Aye.
John Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. The hearing is now open. Anything we should know about this? Anything different that we should know about this one? Mr. Williams?
Nope.
Mr. Regan, do you have any comments on the plan?
Just a quick question. This one's better illustrated in the front. It looks like the two sewer lines come out in an island that separates the driveways. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, if you have to repair the sewer, you're going to be digging up the whole island. I assume there's going to be either granite, concrete, or asphalt berm on either side of that, correct?
They're just driveways, so they'll just be paved with a landscape strip in the middle. So that island will just be likely to be grass or some sort of landscape mulch or some.
Okay. That's all I had, Wendy.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the planning board members? Are there any questions from the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing due to the April 23rd meeting. Entertain motion to continue to April 28th.
I'll make that motion, Steve Chambers.
I'll second it, John Regan.
John Regan, second, and all those in favor? Steve Chambers?
Aye.
Scott Wren?
Aye.
Ronnie Brooks?
Aye.
John Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. It is continued until 28. 7:20 p.m. Applicant Webster 5 Cent Savings Bank requests a site plan modification under Section 3.2.6.0 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a corporate bank office building on property located at 31 and 35 Millbury Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 42, parcel 21 and 32. Who is here this evening on behalf of Webster 5, and also I'll need a motion to open the hearing.
Scott, I'll make a motion that we open the hearing, Ronnie.
Okay, and Mr. Brooks has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Scott Wren.
Scott Wren is second. All those in favor? Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhilber, aye. It is a vote. Okay, it's open. Mr. Broder, did you want to go ahead and give us an overview on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We have a few folks who are also on the line with us tonight, including the civil engineer, the landscape architect team, and the architects for the project, who will all speak in a minute, but let me just sort of set the scene here. This is the former Fallon Clinic or Reliant Medical building on the bottom of Bancroft Street and Millbury Street. And we were in front of you maybe 6 or 7 months ago discussing the transition with that property from medical to the corporate headquarters of Webster 5 Cent Savings Bank. Since that time, the bank has purchased the property and has undertaken design of the plans that are in front of you, and that I think Adam's got up on the screen, and he's got a little bit of material there that we'll flip through in a minute. But a very exciting transition to this building, going from a very tired facility with some rough pavement and the like, with very little landscaping, to a project that's going to reduce the parking significantly. It's going to have a lot of landscaping put forward on the project, and a really nice look to the exterior of the building. So with that said, we're here for site plan approval to talk about those items. And before I stop for a second, the project has been sent out to Graves for the peer review. I don't believe that the review letters come back yet. So we know that we'll be continuing at the end of this hearing tonight, but we do hope to get through as many issues as we can in terms of the site. I'm sure Mr. Regan's going to supply some interesting questions for us to answer tonight. We'll look forward to those. And with that, I'll turn it over to Randy Myron from Bowler Engineering.
Great, thanks, Tom. The plan on your on the screen right now, folks. So this is the existing site. It's in total, it's just under 10 acres, and there's a large wetland area on the west. Kind of on the west portion of the site. If you're looking at the plan, that would be plan left here. And we actually have we filed a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. The meeting was supposed to be last week, and it's been rescheduled to next Wednesday, the 22nd. So we do have a notice of intent in front of them. But anyway, this is the existing site. There's currently, as Todd had mentioned, it's currently an abandoned building. It used to be used by Reliant Medical, with about 259 parking spaces, and there's 3 points of access to the site. There's 2 driveways on Millbury Street, and there's another driveway on Bancroft Street. And Adam, if you don't mind, just flipping to the next sheet.
Sure, just give me a second.
So the proposed project. Nope. There we go. Yep.
Just scroll down.
Yeah. So this is this is the proposed project here. Essentially, we're proposing to renovate the existing building and put on a small addition. The addition is around just under 1,300 square feet, and it's in the front right corner of the building. And we're also proposing to do some, I guess you'd call them some parking lot improvements to help improve vehicle circulation, vehicle flow around the site, as well as really some pedestrian access around the site. The parking layout is very, very similar, with the exception that we're adding some landscaped areas, adding some amenity areas for employees and pedestrians. And Mike D'Angelo he's going to speak to that in a little bit more. One of the more significant changes is that the parking area, the parking field that exists along the western portion of the site, and again, if you're looking at it, it'd be plan left. That parking lot or parking area is proposed to be eliminated and replaced with some nice new landscaping. So in total here, we are looking to reduce the parking from the 259 spaces that exist today down to 181 parking spaces. And that would be compliant with the required number of parking spaces within the zoning regulations. As a result of that significant decrease in impervious areas, it should be a huge benefit to the receiving wetland system. So there'd be a decrease in stormwater runoff rates, as well as an improvement in stormwater quality. We're essentially proposing to kind of maintain the existing drainage system for the most part. There are a few new deep sunk catch basins that are being added in a couple areas. Those are just to tie into the existing drainage system that's out there today. So the project is meeting the Mass DEP's stormwater management guidelines for a redevelopment. In addition to that, we are also proposing new erosion controls around the limits of the project. There's new silt fence and hay bales along the downstream side of the project, as well as some construction details within the plan set. And from a utility perspective, we're simply proposing to really just maintain the existing utility connections that service the building today. There are no new changes to those being proposed. So that's generally it from my point of view. I'd like to turn it over now to Mike D'Angelo. He'll kind of touch on just a little bit more about some of the landscaping and pedestrian amenities that are being proposed as part of the project.
Hi, this is Mike D'Angelo. Could you please go to the next page?
Is it possible to pull up the colored rendering, like the colored landscape rendering?
I don't have that loaded up. It would take, I can try to find it. If you want to go ahead, I'll go grab the proper file.
Yeah, so while you're looking for that, I could just reiterate kind of what Randy was saying. The owner's goal here is really to add a lot of landscape and remove a lot of parking. So if you look at the plan that's on the screen right now, you'll see on the west side of the property the existing parking lot. That will be totally eliminated. On the southeast side, we're adding a drop-off area, so we're eliminating a large piece of parking there. And the other big move is the north parking lot. All those islands you see back there, those are essentially new. I think there's one or two islands there now. We are going to reconfigure the parking lot. We can maximize tree planting. Where you'll see when he pulls up the planting plan, we're adding a lot of new trees. We're adding landscaping all along the back side of the building, the north entry of the building. And to do that, we're realigning the curb along the north side of the building. Currently, the curb comes in right along the edge of the face of the building on the north face. We're actually bringing it out about 15 feet to allow for landscaping.
We're also adding new site lighting throughout the entire site. It's all going to be, all the pole lights will be dark sky compliant. There will be some low-level bollard lighting, which you'll see on the landscape plan.
Did we lose him?
No, we're just waiting for the landscaping plan to come up.
Okay.
Through the chair, can I ask a few questions?
Sure, Steve, go ahead.
Do we know the approximate number of employees expected to be on the site and what the expected number of customers are?
Let me try to take that question. First of all, with regard to customers, this is not going to be a customer, heavy location at all. This will be for, the backroom operations, the upper level management team, and lenders of all types, commercial and residential. But they do not expect to be having vast amounts of customers at this particular location. It's not intended to be a retail location at all. So there's sort of a dedicated slug of parking up towards the front right-hand corner of the building for visitors. It's fairly limited. Sorry, technology challenges on my end. I can't even find the right plan, but it's fairly limited as to the customer parking. As to employees, I have that number in front of me, and let me find it. I'll come back to you on that if that's okay.
Okay. And I didn't see the parking numbers on a plan. I didn't know if I missed it. I know they just mentioned it, but
yeah, on page, I think in your plan set that was submitted with the application, there's a zoning analysis table in the upper right-hand corner. I think it's page 4 on the site plans that were submitted. Indicates the existing parking's 259 spaces, and the proposed is 181.
Yeah, that's right. It's sheet C-301.
Yeah. And we didn't mention it yet, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. Maybe Riddy and the architect team were going to talk about it, but that right-hand corner of the building, as you're looking from Millbury Street, is currently this sort of a drive-through drop-off area where patients used to come in. I think that used to be the pediatric wing of that facility. And that whole area is going to, and there was parking out there as well. That whole area is going to be reworked, and I think you can tell from the architectural renderings that were submitted, it's a nicer, entryway, a little grander. Certainly, a lot of work is going into that. And with that, there's a reduction in the pavement area in that corner of the property as well. I think it's a significant improvement.
And so I don't think the question was answered about the number of employees. Was there a number there? How many employees will be there?
I have it somewhere. Just bear with me.
Okay.
I also had a question about the loading area. It looks like there's walking paths and such near that area. I didn't know what the proposed loading zone or anticipation of how many deliveries were expected to be at that area.
Yeah, so the loading area is still in the same location as where it exists today. There is no formal loading dock, but there is a receiving door where deliveries would be made, and trucks would just park alongside that sidewalk that's in that area.
Is that a driving lane?
Correct, yes it is.
So there's no formal loading or unloading zone?
That's correct.
Are there any safety features or anything that would prevent people from walking out of those doors into a active loading area? And again, if people were to go out those doors and walk on the sidewalk, is there anything to restrict trucks from interacting with the pedestrians?
I guess I'll defer to Riddy or Rob. I guess my understanding is that they're not expecting any, or they're not anticipating any like large loading trucks for this building.
Maybe this is Rob. Maybe I could sort of answer a couple of these questions. Employee count is projected at 125 people. Just to work through that part of it, the previous question.
Thank you.
Second question, and I don't know if we can get back to the site plan, but even if you go up a little, if you just go up, keep moving up a little bit there, that's going to show you the loading area. So basically, yeah, right there, that's good. So it's not a loading area as a typical building. They don't have a lot of stuff moving in and out. The front of the building is actually being redesigned for the majority of deliveries for FedEx and for UPS and most of what modern businesses get. The back is really more occasional deliveries where they have to get larger groups of elements out of the building, shredding, or some different things that have to go to the branches, but it's not an active load dock. The best way to think about it. So a lot of the load of the everyday shipping to the front of the building. So if you scan down, if you kind of just go one slide below, yeah, there you go. Just a little bit more, please. So what you'll see there is what we were alluding to in the front right-hand corner. The entry is redesigned, so there's a plaza, there's a drop-off area over there, so FedEx and UPS trucks can sort of stop and deliver. There's a controlled vestibule, so delivery people would not get past the first vestibule. There's actually hard to see, but behind a reception desk, there's a drop-off area for UPS. FedEx, and then you enter into the building. So probably see this a little bit better on the site plan, but that gives you the general idea on this part.
Wendy? Yeah? I'll let Steve finish.
So where that vestibule is, and again, without the exact overlay, you're planning on doing away with the parking in that area, correct, or the roundabout? So how close are they going to get to the building? Are they expected to park and then walk the deliveries up to that vestibule?
Yeah, so if you sort of see where the line where the letters are for the grid line numbers, going down that line, that's roughly the edge of the visitor parking that's in that front right side. And that's really for visitors. The employee parking is on the back, is the larger area that you saw. There's a covered canopy that sits in this piece, which you can, I don't know if we have the 3D views that we sent in, but I can sort of describe it off of this. So it's really just that, almost from the G3 point to that front entry where the FedEx drivers, so there's actually in the site plan, there's a little sort of pull-up area for that, a drop-off area for that. So that's out of the main traffic way. But again, this is visitor parking. The bank doesn't have customers coming. They don't have, it's not a retail bank, so you don't have retail banking customers coming here. So the
operation center.
Relatively
I understand that piece. And then as far as like refuge, trash, dumpster, I'm assuming that's out the back shipping, receiving area?
Yeah, it's out the back. There's sort of a gathering area for that type of stuff, and then it would be brought out. And there's also, I don't know, we haven't really described it, but there's sort of an existing shed on the site at the back of it, which will also be sort sort of a maintenance shed. Not here, but on the site plan you see it at sort of the upper northmost corner of the site. And that will be retained and revamped a little bit.
Through the chair, I'd like to see some consideration for people that are going to be walking out there if they're emptying trash to the cleaners at night. Just something to delineate that people are coming and going through that drive lane.
I guess, Adam, is it possible to pull open the site plan?
Yeah, just a sec.
Mr. Brooks?
Wendy, I just wanted to say that to alleviate some of Steve's fears in that loading dock, we could condition it so they have to cross-hatch it with a yellow cross-hatching and maybe also a crosswalk into the area that Steve's talking about now from the building.
I think that makes good sense.
Yeah, Adam, do you mind flipping to the previous, I think it's a few sheets, I guess other direction. Yeah, a few sheets prior to this one.
If you're looking for the crosswalk, I think it's on C301.
Yeah, I think two sheets prior to this one. That's exactly what I was looking for, yep. Yep, this is the one. Right, so that shed and trash area is actually just off the page, at the top of the page here. And there's a crosswalk and a sidewalk that leads out to that area.
And that's through the island?
Correct. Yep.
So are you planning on planting in that area, or is that going to be cement, or how's that delineated, I guess?
Meaning how is that island kind of delineated and configured?
Correct. So you had mentioned that you were going to landscape additional islands and add a lot of plantings.
Right, so there's a concrete sidewalk that's proposed within a portion of that landscaped island, and then the remaining portion is proposed to be landscaped with some shrubs.
Okay. All right, so yeah, my mind was reading that shipping receiving area, you'd be going out that with the trash, not out the other entrance. So that's where my concern was, based on that other entrance, not where it is there. So.
All set, Steve?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Me, if no one else has any other questions.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, this is just a point of, not even a point of interest, but a point to tell you that on C501, where you label your sewer line coming across Millbury Street, which is 8-inch clay. On the utility plan. 501, C501.
Second driveway on Millbury Street there towards the westerly side of the site.
Right there where the parking lot's going to get disappeared.
Right.
Yep. Right. Well, number one, it shows the sewer line in the center of the street. It's not in the center of the street. It's behind the curb on the other side. And that's not clay pipe. It's transite. going in there. I know, Todd, you're dying to find out how I know that.
I don't even know what that is.
And then my only other questions were on your detail sheet on 901, for one. How many of these details in here are just boilerplate and just cut and paste, and how many of these are actually going to be used?
All of the details should be used within the site.
Okay, so on the upper left, typical pavement section, should be 12 inches of processed gravel, not 9.
We're actually waiting on some recommendations from the geotech engineering.
And then on the monolithic sidewalk details, the bottom detail, is that sidewalk poured monolithically with the curb? Because that's what it looks like to me. So that front piece to the right, is that in place of pouring a curb, which you're probably going to precast anyway? But
right.
And then we have the 1/8 inch radius. Is that for a false joint? At the top, you have one on each one. You have a sealer, freeform. Right. That's where you're going to have the separations, right?
That's right. It's meant to be like a control joint. Yep.
Okay. And then on your bollards on the next page, C902. It doesn't say it that I could see it, but they should be safety yellow, even though they have signs on top, possibly. And then when you go to the typical utility trench, for a drain or a sewer, it should be 6 inches of 3/4 stone underneath and at least 6 inches over the pipe. It's probably going to be plastic with the warning tape. And then the above the water should be sand. And then on your HDP storm drainage trench, I don't know what the minimum cover is there. It says minimum cover to flexible pavement, but I don't know what the minimum cover is.
We can take a look at that.
And then on that same detail, if you're going to be putting in plastic pipe there, it should be 6 inches under, 6 inches over. That's just a straight line. And then my question is just an informational question. It's at the bottom of the page where it shows the Nioplast 12-inch locking pedestrian grate. Is that plastic or cast iron?
Plastic.
Now you might have to get by the building inspector. I think that's all I had. Yep.
Scott, did you have any questions?
No questions.
And Mr. Brooks, you all set?
I just think it'll be a nice improvement to the area and a good use for the site.
I agree. I think this is a great project. Property. Yeah. Very good project. Yeah.
I do have one more question.
Okay, John.
According to the communications between the water department and the fire department and Adam, they were concerned about not being able to get close enough to the building with the fire truck for the fire truck hookup.
Correct.
Yes.
And then I couldn't find it on the plans because we only get the half-size plans. There should be 2 water services into this building, correct? One domestic, one fire.
The record plans that we found only showed one water service line coming in. I don't know how accurate those are, but that's what we used for reference.
Yeah, because
line.
You can't have a fire fire service off a domestic line, or vice versa. Unless you get a special permit, I don't think.
I mean, again, we were just using record plans based on plans that we found within Town Hall. And they only showed one water line coming in.
I didn't see anywhere where the fire department concerns were addressed as far as being too far away from the fire truck hookup, which is commonly known as the Siamese, but that's not politically correct anymore.
Yeah, and we're proposing to, if you're looking, I guess if you, Adam, is it possible to zoom in a little bit onto the building?
Yeah.
What sheet are you going to be on?
This sheet right here, the utility plan, because we are proposing to relocate that fire department connection. It's currently kind of in the middle of the building. If you're looking at it from Millbury Street, and we're proposing to relocate it to kind of the area near where the ADA spaces are.
Yeah, I'm looking to see. I see where you say maintain existing water service. The gas service is just to the left of it. And you're keeping the transformer, but I don't see a fire service anywhere. You want plan C501? The utility plan?
Yeah, so there should be a note that says proposed 4-inch storage connection, kind of near that main entrance, that vestibule area.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, so it's actually going to be, the fire department connection is actually going to be a little bit closer to the hydrant that's out on Millbury Street than the existing fire department connection. So I think it's about 30 feet closer than what exists today.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the fire department just didn't see that portion of the plan, or didn't read the label closely.
For the chair, I have another question.
Yes, Steve.
So I know the gas utilities are coming off Bancroft, and I think last year there was talk about paving Bancroft Street. I didn't know if there was any work or anything that needs to be done with anything coming off of Bancroft Street.
The gas utility comes off of Millbury Street.
It looks like the line runs through Bancroft Street, but it looks like our service comes off of Millbury Street.
Correct.
Okay.
Right about the middle of the building.
Yeah, I believe all the utilities come off of Millbury.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Any comments from the public? All right, hearing none. Clearly, just a peer review. Adam?
Yes, hoping we'll get it back soon. They've had it for a couple of weeks now.
Okay, so we could continue to April 28th.
Yes.
And have confidence that we'll have it back by then?
I hope so, yes. I'll follow up and see where he's at.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Todd, if we continue to the 28th, or did you want to? Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, we'd like to keep it rolling. I don't know what's going to happen in the near future, but this is on a pretty fast track to get done now that they've purchased it and done all the design work. So absolutely, that would be the ideal situation to come in 2 weeks and hopefully finish up.
Okay. All right, well, I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing to April 28th.
I'll make the motion to continue the hearing till April 28th. John Regan.
John Regan's made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Ronnie.
Mr. Brooks has made the second. All those in favor? Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Mr. Wren?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Wendy Steinhuber, aye. It is a vote. We'll see you on the 28th.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I think we have plowed through all items.
Yes, that looks like everything, Wendy.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. I'm drawing a complete blank.
You run a great virtual meeting. Well done. Not easy.
Well, thank you so much. You know, the other thing I wanted to do too is I really wanted to. Paul Koski died a couple of weeks ago, and he was a long-time member of the planning board. And although we didn't always see eye to eye, I just wanted to, recognize that he has passed. And so
he was sort of young, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
I don't know how old he was. Ron, do you know by any?
I think he was in his low 80s.
Yeah.
78, 79, 81, something like that.
Yeah, he was a smart man, and we didn't, like I said, we didn't always see eye to eye, but I did just want to recognize that he has passed. He was a longtime member of the planning board. So everybody stay healthy. Look forward to seeing you on the 28th, virtually, but nonetheless, stay well, everyone. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Same to everybody else.
Thank you. John Regan has made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll make the second. Ronnie.
Ronnie's second. All those in favor? Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Ronnie, John, Wendy?
Aye.
It is a vote. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.